Hello everybody, welcome back. A bit of a late start today. I volunteer sometimes at my daughter's school, so, so that's what I ended up doing this morning. So let's have a little look at the charts then, shall we? So the Bitcoin dominance chart looks like we might even be forming a double top here on the dominance. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is the case. Ethereum has been so lame, it's got a weak chart, and that carries the most weight on this chart. But if we do keep coming down, it would be perfectly acceptable for that to happen with the bearish divergence on the weekly here, the overheated, well, it's not overheated, but relatively hot money flow index read as well. Not that that counts for a great deal, but it is an indicator that we're higher than I suppose is comfortable when it comes to momentum. And still, even over this last little trickle up, we've got bearish divergence on the way down here. So we've got very long drawn out bearish divergence as well as short term bearish divergence, all written on the weekly. But yesterday's bounce was pretty sweet, let's face it, and even all these altcoins today still up today despite the dip that took place yesterday. You know, if we measure that wick to where we are right now, it's been a almost 4% move for Bitcoin itself. Again, Ethereum basically just dragging its feet still, which is, I suppose, might be one of the reasons that alt season hasn't really moved into second gear, because you want to have confidence in a chart, you want to have confidence in the dominance chart coming down, and if Ethereum is just going to drag its feet, the dominance chart's not going to give any real specific read of any conviction that you can really buy into. Although I still believe that the cycle will fall into the hands of altcoins at some point, maybe sooner rather than later, to be honest with you. So looking at Bitcoin specifically, the wick here tells a story. Sucked back up, closed above the 200 exponential, which is all part of a golden cross retest. We saw another reaction down here the last time we hit it, particularly very nicely, very nicely, a nice little kiss on the cheek there, and a move back up all the way up to 64, close to 65,000. Now, when it comes to the daily here, as far as the itchy cloud is concerned, we do have a negative cross, but we're far from getting a trend signal down or a short signal or any kind of chaotic problem. And if anything, and again, this is just a bit of hopium for you now. Now that we've had a negative cross above the cloud, which is not a good sign, it's not a signal in itself, but there's a cross all the same. If for whatever reason we start to drag ourselves back up, reclaiming the Bollinger Band and all other moving averages, we will get a cross above the cloud. And if that is the case, that is very close to getting a trend signal on Bitcoin, which might be what it takes to not just take us up to the top of the range, but actually break out here. There's not much point looking at all these altcoins or any altcoin on this video particularly. We're going to do a live stream tonight. If you want to join the Patreon, we'll be looking at all the altcoins tonight. So there's links in the description for that. But let's look over at stocks instead. So we'll start with the US 500, which is, again, more or less unchanged, but from a weekly perspective, new all-time highs. Hidden bullish divergence, which is better than nothing, I suppose. Over to the daily, overheated read, bearish divergence, but the money flow index is kind of sitting at a comfortable level. So it would still, for me, surprisingly for me, be a buy the dip opportunity with any pullback on this one. So a pullback could take you back down to the 21 or the 20, so back down towards 5,700-ish area, those sort of areas. Even a buy the dip on the previous range top of this ascending triangle, which is 5,650. All of that is a buy the dip opportunity for continuation on the S&P. This is the US 500, so it's the futures market, and again, it's unchanged at the moment. So unless we see any sort of major move take place before markets open later on this afternoon, then we might just be looking at a bit of a stale Friday, maybe even a pullback on a Friday. So that be prepared for all of that. Again, Nasdaq still trending up, and again, this has the trend signal on the itchy cloud, and this is why I was saying I'm looking for this to make a new all-time high. It's not what I would say, it's not stronger than the S&P. It hasn't made a new all-time yet, but it's got a better setup as far as a signal that I like, which is a trend signal, and it's still in play. And now that we've made it this far, it'll still be in play if we dip down quite severely. We could dip down all the way down to another 6.5% and still have the trend signal in play. So again, this would be a buy the dip. All of these areas are buy the dip on the Nasdaq specifically. So I like it. I do like the way it's all looking. I do like it. Now, the issue that a lot of people might be thinking about is, why is the Dixie bouncing? Well, I predicted this bounce, didn't I, really? I said, let's be cautious as we hit this 200 simple moving average. If we're going to get a bounce from here, this is where we could bounce from. And where did we think it could bounce to? The center of the range, the 20 moving average, which is where we've hit so far. So again, from wick to wick, that has been a move of 3%, not out the realms of possibility. Again, we were prepared for that. We sort of assumed something like that could happen, but if you're going to get a rejection from anywhere, this would be the most appropriate place for it to take place from, and a rejection from here could take you down nice and slow, back down to where we started from. You're 65% more likely to remain in the portion of the band that you're in, and now that we've revisited the centre of the band, we're 65% more likely to get rejected from there. Whether we make a high or low is a different story, but a rejection all the same. If you break from here, well, and you close the weekly above here, then yeah, we might have to flip the script and assume further upside. But right now, Dixie looking at a rejection, and a rejection that really could take you down to a lower low, and that would be much better. Now I know that this is a really divisive setup here, because some people will be like, well, we're bouncing, we're going to break out. It might be the same people that were saying we're going to definitely break down when we hit this area. I don't know. You've got to take things bit by bit, level by level. There's so many charts that feed into even just the most basic stuff. The Dixie is always a chart that you want to refer to. Dixie, stocks, gold, oil, before you even start looking at Bitcoin, and then lo and behold, any kind of altcoin with a good setup. You've got to look at it all and digest it all. Stick all these charts in a giant cauldron, stir it around, and then see what statistical likelihood of success comes out. And at the moment, despite that big move down yesterday, we've been bought back up, and the Dixie looks like it wants to get rejected from here. So to be fair, despite the bearish overtone across the board from what I saw yesterday on X and even on Telegram, I actually am looking at this like quite a bullish setup with a very good chance of running back up to the top of this range here. Now, if we do get to the top of the range, again, it's a resistance. Respect resistance. Expect to get rejected at resistance. I'm not calling for a big breakout here. I'm not calling for anything. I'm just seeing the chart how it is. Not just this chart, but the Dixie, stocks, NASDAQ, major indices. And they point to one thing, which is actually a risk-on environment, surprisingly, with continuation up. I'm not saying it's going to be phenomenal, but that's what it looks like. So creeping up, basically. Creeping up, and if we move into second gear for what could be the alt season, or just at least a period of altcoins rallying against Bitcoin, because I don't know if you noticed that yesterday when the drop was taking place, altcoin charts versus the Bitcoin pairs were actually positive. Most of them were green, which is an interesting sign. So we might be looking to move into second gear, but if we are, we're still driving uphill, so it's not going to be fast, I don't think, not yet. It's not going to be enormous, but there is opportunities for all charts, I think, at this point now, especially with that, the Dixie getting that rejection from the 20 weekly moving average. But it's a work in progress. Let's not get too complacent either direction. It's still very early days. No need to be overexposed, but I still think things look better than other people seem to suggest they are anyway. Right, I'll leave you with it there. Not much more to say. Perhaps I'll see you on the stream tonight. Alternatively, just have a nice day. Take it easy.